This is the voice of Ron Swanson's moustache. And this is me casually trying to learn something from this flop analysis that I've done through Flopzilla, looking at a King 10-4 flop. No real structure for this, I'm just watching the video as it plays through, discussing my observations, which very quickly leads us into one here. If we look at the top row of charts, middle one on the left, we see the blue section drops to 14 here on the top and middle flush board, whereas it's roughly 30-ish on the other two, so the first and third columns there. And what we notice as it changes to the next range, the blue sections in those first top charts in those first three rows are all fairly uniform, and we see this pattern repeat as we move down. So the adding of the flush draws doesn't really have an enormous impact on the amount of complete junk they have in their hand. Apart from in what appears to be two specific situations. The first one being the top and middle flush on the opening range at the top, and then I think there is another one that we'll see in the bottom section, which is three betting ranges. As you can see at the moment, all still pretty similar, 28%, 25% and 26% in the what I'll call the folding range. And we wait for it to change through, and hopefully we'll see a significant change there. All right, it's here on the first slide. We've gone back to the beginning. As you see here, the middle one, bottom section on the left, has 13%, whereas it's 22 and 19 on the rainbow and the bottom middle flush draw. Only 13 on the top and middle flush draw. Again, similar to the one at the top, something is causing a noticeable difference there. And as you see, when we move on to the next range, everything comes back into line again. And it's on this range that the top one, so what changes between those two? We need to look into that. Is it something being revealed by the data, or is it a mistake in the chart? Could be either, to be honest. So that's the first thing I'm going to have to look into. Just going to let it play, see if anything else seems to leap out at me. One thing that's pretty obvious when it comes to sort of double Broadway flops like this, the three betting range is usually the strongest, then the opening range and the calling range the weakest, simply because it doesn't have a lot of the aces, kings, ace, king in it. It would have three bet, so it's missing quite badly on boards like this. Something else worth paying some attention to is just what situations the introduction of a possible flush draw really significantly changes the range. If we look at the top row there, it's not really making a huge difference as to how much of their range hits and how much misses. I'm guessing that's as we've expanded the range out. Yeah, they do have more potential flush draws in there, but for each suited pair that makes the flush draw, they'll have three other suited hands, the same cards but different suits that aren't making the flush draw. So it isn't actually increasing the percentage of hands they have that are playable. It increases the number but not the percentage, and we're looking at percentages, not overall numbers. Something else standing out here, when we look at the bottom of the 3-bet ranges, even though their actual range is very tight, I mean, we're looking at 76 combos in total, and most of them are towards the top end. Even with an ace-10 board, their continuing range is still more than 50% draws and second pair or worse. So even on a tight range with, you know, a king and a 10 on it, they're still missing a huge portion of it and left with under pairs and 1-over cards and gut shots and so on. So even though it's a 3-bet pot, we shouldn't be too afraid of there being a king on the board. Okay, so now we're going to try and focus a little bit on what would be the second, fourth, and sixth row of charts here. Still really just looking on the left-hand side. These represent their continuation range. So we've dropped the folding range, and now this breaks down what their continuation range is. As you can see, it's fairly standard, really. You know, 10-ish% monsters, 25 to 30% sort of strong top pair or middling pairs with a draw. Except for the calling ranges here. Calling ranges seem to be a lot more on the sort of bottom and third pair range, lots more draws. So yeah, looking at the difference there, the calling range, although the calling range has a much smaller continuation range, that continuation range is actually a lot weaker as well and consists of a lot more draws and weak hands than both the opening and 3-betting ranges do. That's something interesting, or at least worth spending 10 minutes delving a little bit deeper into that in Advantage. Have a bit of a in Advantage. What am I saying? Flopzilla. Then we notice here when the calling range is expanded out, so a little larger range like this, 26% range, their continuation range actually becomes a lot stronger. Fewer draws, more middling made hands. Yeah, and actually starts looking very similar to the 3-betting range, or rather the opening range. Okay, going to move my attention to the right-hand side now. What we're looking at here, the top row on the right is continuation range if we drop gut shots. And yeah, the top row is if we play all the draws except the gut shots, and the second, fourth, and sixth rows would be if we're only playing flush draws. So we've dropped the open-enders as well. From looking at this, obviously if they're only playing strong draws and there are possible flush draws, that does put a big increases their percentage of draws in their range by about 50%. No, sorry, triples them. So it goes from 9 to 10% to 27 to 30%. Yeah, I'm seeing the same effect on the others. Obviously, the amount of draws they have dictated by amount of flush draws they have dictated by the number of suited cards combos they play.